guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video all around how to connect with your feminine energy within this season of winter. If you're new here, my name is Amara. I am a yoga teacher, but I also use this channel to share a lot of soul guidance and a lot of the things I'm really passionate about. And feminine energy is something I talk on within my teaching, but it's also something that is just hugely a part of who I am, and it's a part of the things I absolutely love to share. So without further ado, let's dive straight into this video. So first things first, just to give you a little bit of a feel for what feminine energy is. Now, this can be a whole video in itself, and I do have some videos that talk a little bit more about feminine energy, so I will link them below. But when we are thinking about what it means to really connect to our feminine energy, and when we're really talking about wanting to harness and embrace and almost build that feminine energy, we're thinking about really tuning into the essence of being feminine. So finding softness, finding femininity. There's also an element of sensuality there as well. There's an element of bringing beauty in, but ultimately the best thing that can kind of come from connecting with your feminine is, first of all, feeling more connected to who you are, but also creating this ease and flow within your life. And the season of winter, I would argue, is one of the hardest times to create this ease and this flow, because it's actually one of the seasons where I find that we are most sort of at friction with the natural season that is around us. So fun fact, the season of winter is actually the most feminine of the seasons, which I know some of you guys might find shocking, that the season of winter is inherently very yin, which is another way of referring to the feminine. It is slow, it is dark, it is internal, it is really creating that space for us to rest and slow down. And it's a season of rejuvenation, right? It's a season of coming inwards. And we're going to talk about a few ways that you can not only begin to embrace the season of winter, but also ways that you can begin to step into a higher version of your feminine self this winter. So first things first, when we're talking about embracing, connecting to your feminine energy, especially within the winter months, I'm going to say this every time I talk about feminine energy: you need to rest. You need to slow down. This is a season that is asking you to slow down a little bit, to rest a little bit. If we are constantly pushing, just generally in any season, but especially within the winter season, the days are a little bit shorter. If you are in and around sort of the Europe, where our days become really, really short, but also the energies around you are very, very internal. They're slower. There are animals that go into hibernation within this season. And we as women, something that we do have to not only accept but embrace is the fact that we as women are very, very connected to the earth, to Mother Nature. Now, if we think about our menstrual cycles, they are connected to the moon cycle. They mimic that moon cycle. We know that as women, we are so inherently connected to Mother Nature, and if we live within resistance to her, we will always feel a little bit out of balance. We're never going to be able to step into our highest, most feminine self. So my first little tip is take some time to rest. If you can take a week off, great. What's nice about the winter season is it tends to come around this time of Christmas as well, and this time of like the holiday season. So with that being said, it creates a little bit of space for you to rest, but I also know that the holiday season for many is not very restful. It's kind of party season. Now, the best thing you can do for your feminine energy this winter is still enjoy yourself, because we're going to come to that later, but enjoying yourself and feeling joy is always fantastic for any energy, especially feminine energy. But when you are creating that time for being very outward, make sure you're creating equal time for rest and coming inwards, because you have got to slow down if you want to connect to your feminine energy. Feminine energy is a lot more subtle, it's a lot more internal, it's a lot more intuitive, but you are not going to be able to connect to it and hear it and really embrace it if you're constantly moving in this very masculine, outward, rushing energy. So that is my first little tip. The next tip I have for connecting to your feminine energy within these winter months is focusing on your holistic and hormone health. Now, winter is an amazing time to do this because we're not necessarily thinking about, we're not very outward. So if we need to take some time and take a step back and change things around within our wellness routines or our diet or things like that, we've got this sort of experiment time when we're not really outwards. We're maybe not out in the swimsuit or a bikini, not that it matters. Any body is a bikini body. But we have that sort of time to play around with this, and I really encourage you within the winter months to focus on your holistic health and your wellness routines. Now, when we think about the feminine woman or the idea of the divine feminine, there is this deep connection and acceptance with their body, and through this deep connection and acceptance with their body, they are honoring their body and fueling their body, and their body is allowed to be in complete balance. So first things first, if you're wanting to focus on sort of balancing your hormones within this winter season, you want to think about cycle syncing and really exploring some books around what is your menstrual cycle, how does it work, what are the energies throughout it. And I will always link recommended readings below, but really begin to get to know your menstrual cycle. If you don't already track your menstrual cycle, start tracking it and start tailoring your movement practices and just your life in and around the menstrual cycle. That is a huge tip that will naturally begin to balance your hormones very, very effectively. Another thing to think about is, are you nourishing your body in the way that it wants to be nourished? So making sure that you are eating nice, healthy, seasonal foods, but also thinking about what is it that I need to make myself feel my best health-wise. This can feel like a really big one, but it's also really basic. It's thinking about making sure I'm maybe getting out and getting some fresh air. That can be really hard in winter, but it's so important. And I do actually have a video on my winter wellness ritual, so I will pop that down below as well as the previous video on VLOGMAS if you're watching this at the time. So that can also give you some inspiration for working on your holistic health within the winter months. The next tip for connecting to your feminine energy this winter is to start a new hobby. Now, the reason that I say this is that the feminine energy, the divine feminine, needs an outlet for their creativity. They are extremely creative. They are loving to create and be inspired and just create beauty, right? This is probably something that you already know that you quite like. So can you start a new hobby that really holds space for this winter? So that might be, maybe you start painting, maybe you start. With that being said, I would always recommend, if you're doing like hobby reading, do something that's fiction. The reading that we do that's non-fiction around self-development is not rest. It is great for us and it's a fantastic addition to your morning routine, but it's not 100% rest, so just bear that in mind. Maybe you start reading a historical romance to romanticize your life, whatever it might be. But that is a really, really beautiful one. So that is one idea for you there. Another thing you could do is think of any hobbies that you did within your childhood. So maybe you were a dancer, maybe you were a horse rider. I was a horse rider. Maybe you were I don't know, maybe you did singing, whatever it is that you might have done before. If you're feeling a little bit called to do that again, winter is a really beautiful time to connect to those hobbies again. Or maybe you want to start a new hobby. One of my favorite things that I really recommend to everyone when they're wanting to begin to connect with their feminine energies, I truly believe that the yoga practice can be such a beautiful vessel for this connection. Now, it really does depend on the teachers. Some teachers are very feminine in their approach to yoga and they can really use it as a space to help build your intuition and connect to your feminine energy, whereas other teachers have a slightly more masculine approach. So if you are looking for classes which have that feminine touch and that ability to connect to your feminine, that is kind of my forte. So I will always link my online membership below. If you want to try yoga, there's loads on there. Definitely things for beginners, but I really do feel that yoga is one of the best practices for connecting to your feminine energy, because the aim of yoga is to balance feminine and masculine energies. So it just makes sense. And I know so many students who have come to yoga not thinking that was going to be the case and being like, oh my goodness, I feel so much more connected to myself in terms of my feminine energy, which is just beautiful. That leads me perfectly onto the next thing that you might want to do to help connect to your feminine energy this winter, which is start to build a connection with your intuition. Now, the divine feminine is so deeply intuitive. She has this deep knowing. She has this almost guidance from within, and this is where your slowing down is really important. If we want to build this connection to the feminine, beginning to slow down, and maybe you start a meditation practice, maybe it's a yoga practice, but taking this time to really slow down, create space for your intuition to start to speak. If you want to take this further, you might begin to build even more intuitive practices. Maybe you start working with oracle cards or tarot cards. Maybe you get yourself a pendulum or some crystals and begin to just build your more magical, witchy, intuitive practices. And these are all divinely feminine practices to work with the intuition, to work with energy, and just to sort of dabble in these things and begin to build that intuition and trust in the energy around you. It's such a beautifully divinely feminine thing, but it's also going to benefit you hugely in the rest of your life as well. The next thing that I would suggest for beginning to connect to your feminine energy this winter is to create a vision board. I want you to take a moment and maybe just reflect on the year that has passed, because winter is definitely a time for reflection. Reflect on the year that has passed and think, where have I showed up? It may be in my highest feminine self, very balanced, very divinely feminine. Where are the spaces where I may be showing up in some more wounded feminine or more masculine energy, which really doesn't vibe with me, which I really don't love? And take a moment to reflect on that without any judgment. We're not judging ourselves here. Once you've reflected on that, think, okay, if I am creating a vision for the next season, the new year, whatever it might be, how would I change this? How would I show up? What would this divinely feminine version of myself look like? What does she wear? What does she smell like? What does her hair look like? How does she do her makeup? Maybe that's something you focus on, learning how to do your makeup, but whatever it might be, really beginning to tune into, first of all, the looks of things. Vision boards can be fantastic at that, but then I want you to go deeper. How does this divinely feminine version of yourself feel when she's around people? How does she make others feel? How does she deal with challenging situations, which is always the most challenging thing for the divine feminine, is how we deal with conflict, right? Because the masculine wants to fight, whereas the feminine knows when to set boundaries and when she has to say, no, that's not going to work, but also can be really compassionate when needed as well. So I really, really suggest taking this time to make a vision board for this divinely feminine version of you. Maybe you're halfway there, maybe you're almost already there, but continue to visualize and create this. Now, a lot of people love to make digital vision boards, which are amazing. You can use apps like Canva and things like this. I do always think even if you make a digital vision board, it can be really fantastic to print it off and have it physically as well, whereas quite often for me, I like to print out all my pictures and do a bit of a scrapbooking vibe in my vision board and really take the time to make it beautiful. The ritual of making things beautiful is so unbelievably vital for connecting to that feminine as well. It really is such a feminine practice to make things beautiful. So I'll also link any sort of other resources I have on maybe how to make a vision board. If I don't already have that, I might make a video on it. Let me know if you'd like to see that. Okay, moving on to the next thing you can do to connect with your divine feminine, which I really love, is starting to live with the moon cycles. Now, this is something that kind of connects back to when we were talking about, I guess, Mother Nature as well, but each month there's always a moon cycle. Now, to begin with, I would suggest you really work with the new moon and the full moon. It's actually a new moon whilst I'm filming this today. How perfect. But when we're working with the moon cycles, they can again be really amazing for helping us to connect with our feminine energy, because the moon is innately feminine. It goes through the same phases each month that we go through as women. So the new moon is very much the beginning of a new cycle. So when you think about when you're on your cycle, quite often people call their menstruation cycle their moon cycle because of this exact reason. So the new moon really symbolizes refreshing, resetting, new goals, new intentions. There's a feeling of light is going to come in after the new moon. Then from the new moon towards the full moon, there is a rise in energy, and this is about a 14-day, about 2 weeks, and this rise of energy comes to its peak at the full moon. The full moon is a time where we take this time to really shift and release what's no longer working with us. Now, a lot of people like to manifest around the full moon. Might not always be the best time. The new moon you usually can't go wrong with. The full moon's a bit touch and go, so something to bear in mind there. And I do actually have an entire video on how to live with the lunar cycle, so I will link that below. But this is again a really beautiful practice helping you live with your feminine energy, and the moon is out so much more in the winter, so it just makes sense. And then the last thing you can do to connect with your feminine energy this winter is to begin to develop your relationship with the dark feminine. Now, the dark feminine is not something that when I first started working with feminine energy that I wanted to work with, that I even wanted to really explore, because I myself definitely do lean more to the side of very light feminine, of very sort of angel fairy energy feminine, but that does not always serve me. And as if we are wanting to dive into the divine feminine, there is a balance of light and dark feminine. So when we're thinking of working with light and dark feminine, and when we're thinking of wanting to create this divinely feminine version of ourselves, we have to explore the dark feminine. Now the dark feminine, I like to think of this as our queen energy. So if you think about the queen, she can lead with compassion. She's usually loved by her people, but she has boundaries. She has boundaries. Boundaries are one of the keys of dark feminine, if I'm honest. She has boundaries. She knows what works. She knows what doesn't. At the end of the day, she's like, this is my kingdom. You either stay here and work by my rules, or you can go, to be honest with you. And this is so innately dark feminine, but it's beautiful because it's boundaries. It's not, you can walk all over me and that's absolutely fine. It's actually, no, you know what, that doesn't work for me. And unless you're willing to come and sort of work on my hymn book and my page and willing to accept me for who I am, that's okay. We don't have to be in the same space. There's not really as much anger there. There's not with the dark feminine. With that being said, there is something to be said for righteous anger, which is important too. But there is just this element of, I know my value, I know what I'm worth, and I have boundaries to maintain that. Another big part of the dark feminine is the slightly more sensual side of feminine energy. So kind of like the femme fatale energy of being very, very connected to their sensuality and really owning it as well, and understanding what they need, understanding what they like. So this is again something that you can really, really explore. And there are so many resources out there for you to begin to connect with your dark feminine. Now with that being said, that is everything for today's video on how to connect to your feminine energy this winter. If you did enjoy it, please do let me know. If there are any other videos that you would like to see, please always pop them in the description below. I'm always so happy to see them. I add them to my list of videos I will create going forwards. If you're wanting to start yoga practice to help you connect to your feminine energy, I will link my online membership below. But otherwise, I am sending you so much love, and I will see you in our next video here on my channel. It's likely to be a yoga class for you guys for the winter solstice. So if you are wanting to, again, live with the seasons a little bit more, that winter solstice practice is going to be perfect for you. Right, sending you so much love, and I'll see you soon. Bye guys.